On with the writing of Ovid by Fyodor Dostoevsky, known at the time as Ovid in Rome. These were my original notes. So, to give some context, it's an upholstery novel. There's upholstery, which is like redoing a chair, but there's Epolstory, and it leads to epistemological logic. Um, Epistemological logic is like metaphysics. The bottom rung is ontology, which ties them all together in Lutheranism, or Nietzschean dialectics, or uh, Marcus Aurelius's mind frame, things like that. So Argus eyed is from Ulysses, from James Joyce's Ulysses, and I think it means like a body made of eyes, like the clothes of a dress. They're all eyes instead of like uh, some type of disc. A sylvan pipe. Sylvan is something. The hall is filled with 600 men. The geese in Juno's temple. Constant practice had turned into habit. Stygian marsh. So Stygian came to refer to anything dark, dismal, and murky, like a marsh, um, ditch. Those are river words that Faulkner uses. American theorist is a substitute for broader concepts. A metaphor is when you say, I am a lion. Something is something else. It's a poetic device, mostly. A simile is when you say, I am like a lion, meaning I have yellow hair or I'm very big. Met- a metronome is a timekeeping device in piano. That's Synecdoche. Synecdoche, New York is a movie by Charlie Kaufman with Philip Seymour Hoffman. Irony is when you say something is something else and it can't be. Chrysolites, a yellow, greenish, or brownish variety of olive. Amor is a secret lover. Tufa. So we're currently on the topic of lying. So how difficult not to betray our guilt. 448. 603. Apollo. His sounded heart was seething and swelling with anger. 448. How difficult not to betray our guilt in a facial expression. Mercury is the first planet from the sun. Hermes is the messenger god that comes from Mercury. Venus is a red planet that has felt left out. Aphrodite, their child, is a hermaphroditus. 429, the mischief that madness can work. And on the case that we don't get there, this is my favorite story from Ovid. It did make me weep. He softened the ground with leaves and covered it with seaweed to serve as a mat for the head of Medusa, the daughter of Forsypes. The fronds, acquiring a strange new stiffness in all the stems and the foliage, the sea Nymphs tested this miracle on additional fronds of seaweed, repeated the marvel by tossing the plant's seeds over the waves. Coral today preserves this identical property. Contact with air induces hardness, and what was flexible turns into a hard rock on the water's surface. So the story was, or is, or will be that there were there was a man who went from the ocean to a patch of grass, and there were fronds, and the fronds fell off the tree and turned into a fish that fell and died right next to the ocean. So maybe we'll see it. Centaurs, the minotaurs. That's what those bulls are. So Jupiter is attacking something. This is tough. Let's go with Silver Age. Jupiter determines to destroy the world. Lycion. Okay, Fable 8. Jupiter, not thinking the punishment of Lycaon sufficient to strike terror in the rest of mankind, resolves on account of universal corruption to extirpate them by universal deluge. Some, by their words, approve the speech of Jupiter and give spur to him, indignantly exclaiming, others, by silent assent, fulfill their parts. Yet the entire destruction of the human race is a cause of grief to them all, and they inquire that this is to be the form of the earth in the future when destitute of mankind, who is to place frankincense on the altars, and whether it is his design. Now we might wonder if Frankenstein was written, because this seems like it was written around the time of Julius Caesar, perhaps in the 3rd century AD. The ruler of the god forbids them making these inquiries, to be alarmed for that the rest should be his care, meaning they would lie. People lie about that. And he promises that from a wondrous source, he will raise a generation unlike the preceding race. And now he was about to scatter his thunder all over the land, but he was afraid lest we might wonder why evil people cannot control the weather. The sacred aether might catch the fire from so many flames, and the extended sky might become apocalyptic. He remembers too that it was in Normandy when that didn't happen, at which the sea, the earth, and the palace of heaven, seized by flames, should be burned, and the laboriously wrought fabric, the chadar of the universe, should be in danger of perishing. The weapons forged by the hands of the Cyclops, wow, are laid aside. A different mode of punishment pleases him, to destroy mankind beneath the waves, to let loose the rains from the whole tract of heaven. At once he shuts the north wind in the caverns of Aeolus, and all those blasts which dispel the clouds drawn over earth, and then he sends forth the south wind. The soaking wings of the south wind flies abroad. If we were to continue with that evil men and women are convinced that Judas wrote the Bible, then certainly fish and sharks would work together to create tidal waves, like Sandy in New York City when Google, the data warehouses went out. So perhaps they're correct. His beard is loaded with showers. The water streams down from his hoary locks. Clouds gather upon his forehead, his wings and the folds of his robe. Icarus's father, perhaps, drip with wet Let's check out 50, but we'll remember we're in Fable 8. So, like, one word that John Kennedy didn't come up with in international politics is called cessation of war. You see cessation in 49. It makes sense. If a war is over, then there would be a cessation of war. Another word that John Kennedy didn't come up with is called treaty. It was the doctrine of the Stoic philosophers. So we'll go back to Fable 8. Thought 50. Iris, the messenger of Juno, clothed in various colors, indeed, collects the waters and bears a supply upwards to the clouds. The standing corn is beaten down, and the expectations of the husbandman, now lamented by him, are ruined, and the labors of a long year prematurely perish. Nor in the wrath of Jove, satisfied with his own heaving, but Neptune, his azure brother, aids him with auxiliary. He calls together the rivers, which soon as they had entered the abode of the ruler, says, I must now employ a lengthened exhortation, pour forth all your might. It seems that North Carolina is stuck in the muck because hurricanes don't make sense. Open your abodes, and Kansas is stuck in the muck because tornadoes don't make sense. Thus he commanded they return and open the mouths of their fountains and roll on into the ocean that Belgium, Cambridge, and Boston are stuck in the muck because school shootings don't make sense. The rivers breaking out rush through the open plains and bear away, together with standing corn, the groves, flocks, men, houses, temples, and together with their sacred utensils. If any house remained and not thrown down was able to resist ruin so vast, yet the waves rising aloft covered to the roof, that in the future of AI the past will be irrelevant. Overwhelmed that the PTA is silent, and now sea and land had no mark of they were asking their kids how to use it. Everything now was ocean, and to that ocean shores were wanting. One man takes possession of a hill, another sits in a curved boat and plies the oars there where he had lately plowed, another sails over the standing corn of the roof of his country under water, another catches a fish on the top of an elm tree. An anchor, if chance so directs, is fastened in a green meadow. On the curving keels came in contact with vineyards, now below them. And where of late the slender goats had cropped the grass, the unsightly sea calves. In the log of the Sea of Cortez, the sea cow was the engine of their ship. The Nereids wonder at the groves, the cities, and the houses underwater. Dolphins get into the woods and run against the lofty branches. The wolf swims. The tawny lions, the wave carries the tigers. Neither does the powers of his lightning shock avail the wild boar, nor his swift legs stag. I'll skip this one. Neptune, Fable 9. Neptune appeases the angry waves and he commands Triton to sound his shell. Triton, the god of the sea or ocean. A Triton is you know, basically a shovel with three prongs, that the sea may retire a tripartite, to quote Napoleon Bonaparte. Jesulian and Pyrrha are the only persons saved from the flood. Jupiter beholds the world overflowed by liquid water, but so many thousands of late that sees that you could say anything you want about Jupiter because no one's ever going to get there. He both lays upon the earth, unless Jupiter's a person. This rage too of the sea does not continue. His three-forked trident now laid aside, the ruler of the deep assuages the waters and calls upon the Azure Triton. The Azure is the Italian Socrates. the Murex and the trumpet. Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto were perhaps originally three brothers, kings of separate kingdoms, having been deified, each retaining his sovereignty, that they were depicted in the world divided, that Ovid here represents employment. Deucalion and Pyrrha re-people the earth by earth casting stones. You be the first to cast a stone, empty houses weep. They resolve to say the prayer of heaven and seek relief through the sacred oracles. There is no delay, though. Together they repair the waters of Cepheus, though not yet clear, yet now cutting their wonted channel then, and they have sprinkled the waters poured on their clothes and their heads, and their turned steps to the temple of foul moss, whose altars were standing without fire. As soon they reached the steps of the temple, each of them fell prostrate to the ground and trembling gave kisses to the cold pavement. And thus they said, if the deities prevailed upon just prayers are to be mollified, if the wrath of the gods is to be averted, O Themis, what art the loss of our race to be prepared and assisted? O gentle moss goddesses, the goddess was moved and gave response. Depart from my temple and cover your heads, and loosen the garments girt around you, and throw behind your backs the bones of your great mother. For a long time they are amazed, and Pyrrha in the first by her words to break the silence, and then refuses to obey the commands of the goddess, and begs her with a cockroach to grant her pardon, and treads and trends the shades of caste. The meantimes they reconsider the words, the response given, but involved in dark obscurity. Then they ponder them among themselves. Upon that, the son of Prometheus, the god of fire, soothes the daughter of Epimetheus, Epimetheus, with these gentle words, and says, either is my discernment fallacious or the oracles are just, and advise the great mother of earth. I suspect that the stones of body are the earth. These were ordered to throw behind her backs, although she descended from Titan. Remember the Titans. Still, her hope is involved in doubt, so they distrust the advice of heaven. But what harm will they try? They go down and they veil their heads, and I am reading this out loud. Behind their footsteps, the stones that makes it experimental began to lay aside their hardness for stiffness, and by degrees to become soft. What soft assumed new form, and after larger growth, a milder nature too was confirmed by some shape of man. A shape of man indeed, another reference to Icarus, of wax, portions adapted for use of the body. That which is solid and cannot be bent is changed into bones, like Pinocchio, still remains under the same name. And in a little time, by the interposition of the gods above, the stones thrown by the hands, the female race, the feline cat, thence the hardy generation to endure fatigue, and we give proofs for which we sprung. I think we need not an explanation. The earth being warmed by the heat of the sun produces many monsters, among them the serpent Python, which Apollo killed with his arrows. To establish a memorial, he institutes the Pythian game, the statue of Abraham Lincoln that DC has adopted. And the former moisture was thoroughly heated by the rays of the sun. The mud and wet fens fermented with heat, and fruitful seeds of things nourished some regular shape. Thus, when seven stream Nile had forsaken the oozy fields and had returned its waters, the fresh mud had been heated again by the sun. There was a Cyclops, perhaps, still imperfect, and yet destitute of some of their limbs, and often in the same body is one part animated and the other part is frank. For when moisture and heat have been adjectively longing, and although fire is the antagonist of heat, yet moist vapor creates all things, and this discordant concord is suited for two words only, I think. Covered with mud by the late deluge, so a flood is often a delusion. It's produced by a democratic will, meaning that Americans and American democracy is often delusional. thou enormous python, and thou unheard of serpent, wast a source of terror to this new race of men. So vast a part of mountain did those occupy. The god that bears the bow, and had never before seen such deer and timorous goats, destroyed them over with thousands of arrows. I say to you, I am tired of suffering the slings and outrageous fortune of concubine men in boxing and running and chariot racing, received the krakow of beechen whales. And um, did you know that whales often get beached when they die? Apollo, yeah. So a lot going on here. This isn't necessarily read as a play usually. Classics are usually read, in silence in the library. Daphne, the daughter of Peneus, was the first love of Phobos, definitely a moon, perhaps of Saturn, definitely Jupiter, proud of having lately subdued the serpent, and having seen him bend and bow the drawstring, and said, what hast thou, wanton boy, with gallant arms, such a burden as that better befits my shoulders? I am whom I able to unerring wounds to the wild beast, wounds to the enemy, who lately slew with arrows innumerable the swelling python that covered so many acres of land with pestilential belly. Doth thou be contented to excite I know not what flames with thy torch, and do not claim lay to praises properly his own? To him the son of Venus replies, let the bow shoot all things, Phobos, my bow shall shoot thee, and as all animals fall short of thee, so much is thy glory less mine. He thus said, and cleaving the air with his beating wings, activity. Indeed, I believe Icarus was made of wax, and then his dad, Icarus' dad, as he flew too close to the sun, he grabbed his own neck. The one repels, the other excites desire. That which causes love is gold and brilliant with a sharp point. That which repels is blunt and contains lead beneath the reed. This one god fixed is the nymph, the daughter of Peneus, but perhaps wounded by the very marrow of Apollo. Through his bones pierced by the arrow, immediately one is in love, the other flies from the very name of a lover, rejoicing in the recesses of woods and the spoils wild beasts in hunting, and becomes a rival, a fillet tried together her hair, pulled up without any order. Many a one courted her, she hated all wooers, not able to endure and quite unacquainted with man. She traverses the solitary part of the woods and cares not what of Hymen, what love or what marriage means. Many a time did her father say, my daughter, thou owest me a son in law. Many a time did her father say, my daughter, thou owest me grandchildren. She utterly abhorring the nuptial torch, as though a crime had been committed, the blush of modesty, her beauteous face, clinging to her father's neck. And we'll stop there.